Hey gang, it's Eric Shanefield here with Local Marketing Institute. Welcome to this week's office hours session. Today we're excited. We're going to do an under the hood session here with ThriveHive. We've got both David Mim and Alex Cummings who are going to be joining us here. As you may have heard, David just made a big change. He just became the VP of Product Strategy for ThriveHive, and Alex is in charge. He's the Director of Product over there. So, gentlemen, I think without any further ado here, I'm going to do a couple of announcements and we'll jump on in. First of all, if you are watching us on Zoom, you can feel free to ask Alex and David any questions you want. Use the Q&A button on the control bar at the bottom of your screen there on the Zoom control bar. If you're watching us live in our VIP Facebook group or archived afterwards, feel free to post your question as a comment there right below the video. And if you're watching us archived on the Local Marketing Institute website, you can post your question as a comment right below that post as well. So we are recording this, and those are the ways that you can ask your questions and watch it archived. All right, without any further ado, David, Alex, I'm just going to go ahead and turn this over to you guys.
Sounds good. I think Alex is going to kick things off. Just say a couple words. Really excited to have so many people join this webinar. It's obviously a pretty compelling topic for a lot of people with good reason. If you've been following what I've been saying and some of my conversations with Mike Blumenthal over the last couple of years, Google My Business has really kind of become the starting point for local SEO for a lot of businesses these days. And one of the reasons I was so excited to join ThriveHive is that's sort of been their mantra and their theme for quite a while as well. And kind of on that note, we've built this Grader product that Alex has been leading the charge on. We've just released a new integration that Alex will show you, but really excited to have the opportunity to kind of show how the product works and take your questions. So with that, I think I'll turn it over to Alex.
Perfect. Thanks, David. So to David's point, one of the things that we were really focused on when we were creating this product, this ThriveHive Grader, was this concept that Google is this constantly evolving machine. There's always new functionality. There's always a new approach. For a while, it was don't use call tracking. Now it's use call tracking. There's new features, new functionalities that are all rolling out. And I think in the local digital space, I think people like David Mim or Mike Blumenthal are always at the forefront and know what's going on. But we have a lot of phone calls and conversations with small businesses. And one of the biggest things that we hear over and over again is, I know I need to be on Google. I know it's critical to my business. I just don't know how I'm doing. Am I doing well? Am I doing poorly? And so the grader was really meant to do a couple of things. The first thing is really to give them just a high level view. And that really is represented as an individual grade, as well as 3 sections that we'll dive into. But it's also just meant to kind of show them some of the things that maybe they didn't know about. Things like posts or some of the new bits of functionality that are coming out that really can support conversions within. So what we'll do is we'll dive in and like Eric said, if there are questions, feel free to throw them over and we'll try to answer them as we go. So within the grade, the first thing that we're looking to do is actually have the user connect their Google My Business account. So when they click the button, we're going to let them know that in order to get the grade, that this is something that they need to give us access to. One of the big things we hear and one of the big concerns is privacy, making sure that you're not using data maliciously. And so we really want to make sure that the user knows what they're getting into. And so the reason also, I should just kind of mention ahead of time, the reason that we want to get access to the account is specifically so that we can get a really comprehensive view of their Google My Business profile. There are some data points that are available on a more public facing API, but our goal is really say we want to be as comprehensive as possible, and that's just not possible unless we're really looking at all of the details. So the user will go in, they'll select the account that they're actively managing their Google My Business profile with. And then depending on the type of user, and what we've seen is that if the user is more sophisticated, if they're more like an agency, you'll start to see all of the different Google My Business accounts that you might be managing. So we wanted to make sure we were supporting that because we know that there are a variety of different use cases that people have. In this case, we'll use the ThriveHive Grader here, and we'll select that specific account. And then if there are multiple locations, the user will also have the opportunity to select that individual location. All of these screens go away if you're really a small business that has one location and you log into that account, will automatically just start showing the grades. This is much more for those kind of multi-business or agency users. we'll select this barrel Junction here, a restaurant, and select the business. So one of our goals was try to make it as easy as possible. One of the things you'll notice is there's no data input. The user can go through and everything is happening automatically behind the scenes. So as soon as they click that button, this is the actual kind of big grade that we're showing. And it's broken down in a few different ways. The first and kind of foremost is this idea of overall, how are you doing? Because again, answering that first question, but we also wanted to really start diving into individual sections that we really deem and kind of have found to be really important to the user. And one of the things that you'll start to see is as we scroll down, you'll notice that the sections and the scores on average are getting lower and lower. And that's actually a trend that we've been seeing across the board. So the first one is this idea of presence. So for us, presence has been something that I think everyone has really identified Google as being the leader in for a long time. And so it's no surprise that this is oftentimes kind of the strength for the businesses that we're looking at. For this presence score, we kind of look at individual things like the listing status. So is the business verified? Are there any pending updates for the business? Are there any known duplicates for that location based on what we're getting back from Google? We also look at the core business information. And so name, address, phone number, but also things like the additional attributes, the hours, the description. There are a few fields that we chose to exclude, things like store codes or things like open date that weren't as applicable. We really wanted to focus on the big ones. The other thing that I'll mention is you'll actually notice that because this is a restaurant, we're showing the menu URL. So we are looking at the primary category and starting to tweak and change the types of scores and grades that we get, just to make sure that we're accounting for all of those individual fields that are specific to that category. And then the last one, kind of rounding out presence here, is this idea of photos. So same thing here, because it's a restaurant, we see things like food and drink, interior, exterior. And we're not only looking at the fact of do they have it or do they not, but one of the things that you'll see as kind of a theme here is this idea of how actively or how much are they engaging with Google? Are they uploading new photos on a regular basis? How many do they have total? So those are all things that are kind of going into this general presence score. And it's kind of important and interesting to note the different things that we said no to or that we're marking, because as we move into Perch a little bit later on in the demo, we'll kind of see those same things reemerging.
Hey, Alex.
Yep.
On this screen here, I mean, if you don't mind, we actually have several questions coming through. And while you're on the screen, if you don't mind me, I'd like to jump in with a couple of them. So one of the very first questions that came up, it says, is ThriveHive now an admin or manager of my Google business account if I use this tool?
Yes, and so we really want to be transparent with it. So the permission that was given to ThriveHive is to view and manage that permission or that profile. And so it's important that we're not looking at every single location that you have in Google My Business. We're really focused on this one. The other thing that we've done is at the bottom of the page, and I can show it when we scroll down there, we also have the ability to forget the business. We want to make sure that it's easy for people to be able to say, you know what, I got my grade, I don't want you to have access anymore. So that is available, to make sure that we have no more access after that.
That's great. So you guys are being straight up front with us here. You are a manager of the account, you have access to it, but as a business, I could go in and get my grade. It'd be nice because as I make changes, I can continue to use this, but if I ever don't want to use your tool anymore, I can just remove it and I'm done.
Absolutely.
And incidentally, if I could just say, one of the reasons that you might want to consider giving us access, at least on a trial basis, is later on in the demo, Alex will show you kind of some of the prompts that we can give you within the Perch inbox. And over time, those will be attached to actions so that if you say, yeah, I do want to upload a new photo, you'll be able to do that right from the sort of conversation that's happening in inbox. And so we hope that by becoming a manager of your account, that it actually will save you a bunch of time in the future with a lot of these tasks that we're saying you might need to complete. So that's kind of the rationale behind why we've kind of set it up that way.
I think it's great. Well, I mean, you got to be a manager of the account if you're going to get this data out. So I think it's smart, but the fact that you've made it easy for people to detach, I think is going to give people a better comfort level as well.
Yep.
A couple other things here. I think people are noticing the attributes that you have there, the menu URL. Do these attributes change by category? And I think you said yes.
They do, yeah. So one of the things that we do, and it's the fun part of the product side, which is you realize that Google, and the way that they've formulated their attributes, no two categories are alike. And so what we're doing is we're actually taking that primary category, looking at the known list of attributes available and then making our percentage based on how many you have complete compared to the overall total for that specific category.
For that specific category, off the primary category, right?
Correct.
Right. Okay. The same thing. We had another question asking about photos. Like, I'm a service area business. We don't have interior, exterior photos. Do you vary your photos? I guess the question is, do you vary your photos as well based upon product category?
Yep, absolutely. So there's things like identity or other types of at work that you might see if you're in the massage space or things like that. And so, yes, that is something that we are starting to do. And it's also, one thing that I think will continue to be evolving is that there's always, I think there's 4,000 plus categories that Google actually supports. Even just in the restaurant space, there's like 400. So it is, something that is, we're constantly evolving with, of trying to make sure that we're tweaking and updating these grades to be as accurate as possible for those really more specific verticals. But definitely today, some of those big ones are going to be accounted for.
Makes sense. Makes sense. And then I think one more question, two more questions, then we can move on. I think I know the answer to this, but it says, hey, I'm a service area business. Does this work as well for service area businesses as it does for location businesses?
Yep. So one of the things that you'll actually notice is not included in that business info, and I think I actually said it but did not mean to, is the idea of an address. So we're not actually scoring you based on the name of the business, the address, or the primary category. And the reason for that is you cannot create a Google business profile without those three fields. So we decided to just say, look, everyone's going to have them anyways. They're just kind of bonus points. But it also allowed us to not really have to worry too much about all of the toggles between service or primary, because all of the rest of it is still applicable.
That's great. And I think the last question that we can move on here was, says, can you go back up to the top of the screen for a second, to the main percentage? Yeah, your presence, your needs some work and your presence. These percentages, are these based off of what Google Insights tells us currently, or is it based off another source of data?
Yeah, so this is a ThriveHive percentage that we're giving you. So we're not looking at the insights to calculate this. What we're saying is out of 100% in terms of overall, and then each of the individual sections, this is just based on some things that we have behind the scenes to kind of calculate these scores.
Right, but all this data is being pulled from your Google My Business listing. You guys are just putting your own proprietary kind of rating on the data you're getting from Google My Business. You're not using any third-party external data sources, right? That's
absolutely correct. Yep.
Okay, cool, thanks.
Yep, and we are using the Google My Business API for all of this stuff. So there's no, it's really a direct connection into GMB. It's not through a third party, just to make that extra clear.
Great.
Perfect. So that really represents the kind of main presence. The next thing as we're scrolling down here, no surprise probably to anybody, is this idea of reputation. Probably one of the most important things beyond having those foundational pieces of your profile in place, looking at the types of reviews that are coming in. So we look at our counts. Again, how many are you getting this week, this month total? Same deal in terms of the way that we're factoring in terms of the fields that we're showing, is we're also really looking and working on toggling what type of, or kind of what cadence makes sense based on your category. So again, if you are a massage therapist, you may not be getting reviews every week, and that's okay. So we don't need to be grading you and all of a sudden docking you points. You're a hotel, you're a restaurant. It would be crazy if you weren't getting, 5 or 10 reviews on a weekly basis, just kind of the way that each one of those verticals work. The other thing that we're looking at, and again, something that's always been really important on the Perch side, and we really wanted to make sure we were grading here as well, is this idea of how actively are the users or the business owners engaging on either positive or negative reviews. Oftentimes, I think people know for sure they need to reply to negative, even if they're not exactly sure how. But I think sometimes it's overlooked, that kind of responding to those positive reviews. Not all of them, but certainly making sure that they're being taken into account. And then, of course, the overall average rating for that location, making sure that that's a big factor that we're looking at as well.
So I know that there was some discussion a while ago between a lot of various SEO experts on here as to whether or not responding to positive reviews was a good thing or bad thing. Is it your guys' position here with a tool that, hey, responding, I mean, obviously it's in red and says no. So is it your position here that responding to all reviews, both positive and negative, is encouraged?
And I'll certainly let David jump in also. I mean, I think what we have seen is that in terms of negative reviews, I think it's very binary. Every negative review that comes in, you're going to want to address, both for that existing customer as well as future customers. For positive though, I think it's oftentimes something that's overlooked both as an opportunity to just say thank you and show that engagement with the customers, but also as a way to take that positive review and do more with it, right? Like that's a perfect, as we get into posts and outreach beneath, what a great thing to promote about your business than to say, hey, this is a great review that we just got. So I think people oftentimes just say, wow, the positive review I got was enough. That's all I needed. But I think our stance is that you can actually do more with it. And that engagement is never going to be something that's going to hurt you on your profile.
Yeah, I think it reinforces the behavior on the part of, potentially on the part of other customers, right, who are reading the reviews before they come and visit your business. Like, hey, this business owner is actually paying attention. I should leave them a review as well. I was actually just searching in another window here. I know Miriam Ellis from Moz wrote a really good post in May of this year, 2018, around kind of the new consumer expectation around review responses. And so more and more consumers actually do expect sort of that they want to know that their feedback's being heard and that their reviews are being heard. And so I think that, as Alex said, maybe you don't need to respond to all reviews, especially if it's just, a couple words like, fast service, good food, something like that, right? But if somebody's taking the time to leave a couple paragraphs, you probably want to acknowledge that time and say, thanks for stopping in. We'd love to chat more next time, something like that. So I think that, it's a little bit category dependent. It's a little bit reviewer dependent, but there's certainly, I think, a baseline level of response, even on positive reviews that every business should be doing.
Yeah, plus Google is now notifying the reviewer when the company responds to their reviews. So that's a good thing too.
Exactly. It's a way to deepen that relationship. So
one more quick question on this just came through.
Yep.
Your average star is at 50%. Does that mean a 2.5 star?
That's a great question. And that's actually something we wrangled with quite a bit. It does not mean 2.5 star. We're actually kind of weighting it differently to say, hey, if it could be a 4.5, a 4.3. We did just decide to go with percentages, not to break it up to all of a sudden randomly have a weird decimal in there. But yeah, at this point, it's not just 2.5.
Okay, so a follow-up question from the same person. Okay, so what does 50% actually mean?
Yeah, so again, it's going to be all based specifically on the type of category that you're in. And so that's why we wanted to obfuscate it away a little bit, was that it's not 50% may be good for, or not 50%, excuse me, but a 4.7, if you're a restaurant, is an amazing review because of the sheer number of reviews that you're getting.
Right.
A 4.7, if you are, in the service business where you're like having those really personal conversations, could be not so good. And so what we wanted to do is say, look, a percentage actually allows us to be a little bit more descriptive to the user of like, how good is this based on your category, as opposed to just saying, hey, it's 4.7, which is 4.7, which is 4.7. So that was some of the logic behind the percentage.
And just to follow up on that, I know we're supposed to be, exclusively talking about ourselves on this webinar, but I do think it's worth bringing up. Bright Local actually just published an amazing study earlier this week on the average number of reviews and ratings by category. So I would really encourage everybody to read that study. I know they're a partner of yours, Eric, on some of your educational series. So hopefully that's all right to plug somebody else.
No, it's cool. Look, we're all trying to help businesses out here at the end of the day, and I appreciate that. But you're right. So what you're kind of doing is something similar. You're saying, hey, for your category, you're about average for your category, is what this basically says.
Exactly.
Got it. Okay.
Cool. So the last section of the grade itself is now looking more at this idea of customer outreach. And so oftentimes, this is really where there's a lot of kind of customer education that I think is happening. Even though posts have been around in the space for a little while, I think customers are just starting to kind of come around to the fact that they exist. And I think there's a lot of questions of how often do I need to do it? What should it look like, or what should I talk about? Or is this like Facebook, or, so there's a lot there. So really this section for us is almost representing just like a, hey, did you know? Because so many people are coming in without having done it, it's a great way for us to just kind of give some indication that it exists, and also talk about a few key elements of it. So for one, do you currently have an active post running right now? If it's an event, we'll actually know that it's running, currently on your site. Or if it's not an event, it's just kind of like the what's new. We'll see if it's in the last 7 days. How many have you done this month? Again, the goal being is like some established cadence. And then how many do you have total? And then in terms of post structure, one of the other things we've heard a lot of questions about is we've seen a lot of people that'll put a photo up and put a copy. I think because of their familiarity with Facebook and not really having a lot of links. So oftentimes we want to make sure that they're actually utilizing the photos, the description, as well as that call to action. So what we're doing is we're saying, okay, based on all of the posts that you've done, how many of them have all three of those elements? And that's what we're looking at in terms of completeness.
Got it. So now there's different things, right? There's events, there's other regular things. Are you kind of checking for completeness on those factors too?
Yeah, we kind of made a conscious decision not to wade too deeply into like segmenting out events versus what's new versus promotions, because it's really difficult to know for an individual business what makes sense to them. So it's hard for us to say, hey, you should be doing events over promotions. So we wanted to make it a little bit more generic. And there's even spaces like the hotel industry where posts are not even allowed. So wanting to make sure that like, while there's still development here, this, like I said, I think was a little bit more for us to just be like, hey, did you know you can do outreach, and less about getting too in the weeds about all the things you could do? Because I think so many people don't even fully understand what's there yet.
Got it.
Perfect. So then at the very bottom, one of the things that we really wanted to try to do is we really kind of are embracing this idea of multiple paths. So we do have this concept of this really like do it for me, do it with me path, which is much more about this idea of work with the pro. So this allows a user to kind of call and schedule some time. I've actually been fielding quite a few of these calls myself just to kind of see what people are thinking. But it helps us kind of explain the grade and really walk people through our scoring logic and why we're doing the things we're doing. But I think the thing, frankly, that we're most excited about and where I think we're moving in is this idea of continue on my own. So knowing that, you know, users are, I think, more and more interested in not always talking to somebody, especially in our space. They get a lot of phone calls, they get a lot of emails saying like, hey, we have this new latest, greatest from a marketing perspective. So we really wanted to give them the ability to kind of continue some of this on their own. The other thing while that is going is I'll just show that forget my business, like we were commenting earlier on.
Got it.
So a quick way to do that. When the user clicks on the continue on my own, what we're actually doing is jumping over to our, what I would consider to be kind of our primary application. And this is a platform called Perch. And Perch is a tool that is actually now going to take all of the information that we had from your Google My Business profile and give you ways to start acting on it. So for us, the grade is something that's great for just kind of a high level overview. And I think, Eric, you had mentioned this earlier. If you wanted to come back a few weeks later and see how you're doing now versus then, it's great for those kind of one-off touches. But Perch for us really represents where you go on an ongoing basis to actually affect change. And the inbox is kind of the newest piece that we've rolled out, and the two work really well together. And so what we're doing is this idea of saying, okay, now we are switching over to this idea of guidance. We've identified what's wrong. And now what we're going to start to do is actually give you actionable individual tasks that are based on the things that we saw within your grade. So one of the very first things that jumps out here, and we're always kind of showing the top 5. So it is a ranked list based on kind of our research of what's the most important, impactful thing for you to do. So with any one of these tasks, so for instance here, review your recent updates that Google's made about your business info. So when you click on this, this is really where we come in with this idea of a conversational UI. So for us, it's great for mobile, but we also really wanted to use that on the desktop version as well. And it's always going to do a couple of things. So the first is going to identify for you what the task is. So in this case, Google Updates. Then one of the things that we found is that users generally want more information about why they should do that or why that's important specifically for them. So in this case, pending changes need your attention. You'll see a prompt on your website dashboard to review these and look for orange. So really giving them like, here's where you're going to want to go. If they do want to learn more, they can always click here and we have documentation that's ready for them to review. But then beyond that, if they actually want to review their Google Updates, this is where we actually are going to link them over and deep link them into their Google My Business profile so that they can actually start to go in and make changes specifically against that location. So now you're on your info section. If this is something more pertinent to reviews or photos or posts, we're dropping you on those individual pages. But we really wanted to make sure we made it as easy as possible for that small business owner to identify something that's wrong, learn how to fix it, and then be taken directly to where they can go to actually make that improvement.
Right. So directly within Google My Business. Actually, that was a question come up. So is Perch part of the free platform? Or is that part of a paid platform?
Yep. So Perch is actually a part of the free platform. And so for us, the user can go in, they can get their grade and still start using the Perch functionality. And again, the beauty is that the account setup that they got within Perch was all based on that Google My Business information that they shared with us earlier. So to David's point, there are certainly benefits. And that was one of the big things we really wanted to focus on from a product perspective, was that it's a very big ask, and we take it very seriously when you request that level of information from a business owner. So we wanted to make sure that the value proposition was large enough to warrant that kind of request. And so that's really why we felt like keeping this as the free offering to give you that recommendation was so important.
Got it. So if I understand right, then the grader checks my Google My Business listing, gives me, tells me how I'm doing, where I can improve. Perch is then really more of a guided. It's guiding me through the things I need to change, what I need to update, helping me monitor it as I go along, and then linking me off. I can do my own changes in Google My Business. And then ultimately, if I want to use more of the overall ThriveHive platform, I can connect with you guys either to have you guys do some services for me, or to actually utilize your paid tool to manage my overall local marketing infrastructure. Is that safe to say?
Yes, absolutely. And what we found too is that, again, we always wanted to give that idea of like, let the customer start on their own. One of the things that we found about small businesses, and I think this is universal, is that none of them have the time available to really do everything that they want to do.
Right.
And so for us, and it's the other reason that the grade is so interesting, is it allows us to say, hey, if that grade down the road starts slipping, it's a great way for us to step in and say, hey, we can help. Now you have the opportunity to do this on your own. And if you can, go for it. But there's always going to be that like, hey, 3 months go by and I'm just not able to keep up. And that's where we can kind of come in with some of those additional services and offerings.
Got it. So Terry, I do see your questions. I'm going to get to those here in just a second. We did have one question here, which I think is important. Agency, is there an agency version of this that agencies can utilize this tool for their clients, utilize as a lead generation tool as well, but then ultimately maybe work them into your platform?
Yeah, so at this point, we have not worked directly with agencies. We have worked with associations and some other groups there, but definitely agencies are an area that we are kind of excited to explore. Again, we're not trying to make this something where it only has to be a ThriveHive option. I think there's a lot of agencies out there that are kind of in the smaller realm that could really benefit from the quick automation of this, plus some level of Perch and being able to engage with our customers. And so it's certainly something that we're wide open to.
Yeah, I think there's been several questions in different places here about the agency aspects of this. I think a lot of people have a lot of interest in saying, hey, how could I put the grader tool on my website, make it available to people, use them as leads for me, but then they could also turn into potential ThriveHive customers. So yeah, I'm glad to hear that you guys are exploring that.
Yeah, and just to kind of add a little more context there, that's one of the areas where I think I can maybe bring some of my historical experience and connections. We've had an agency platform with Tidings for a year or so at this point. My experience at Moz, obviously, I talked to a lot of agency owners when I was helping run Moz Local. So I think it's an area that, like Alex was saying, Perch had been exclusively focused on just acquiring small business customers or users. Really, they're free. It's a free product, so acquiring small businesses directly. And I think I'd love to help the company kind of figure out, okay, well, where can we put out a sort of mutually beneficial agency offering along the lines of what you were just describing. So it's definitely top of my mind. There's always a priority list to kind of stack it against, but it's something that we would love to be able to roll out, at some point in the future.
No doubt, but nonetheless, even if you are an agency, you could certainly use the grader to walk your own clients through it.
Totally.
And whether or not you decide to use the ThriveHive platform is up to you, but it's a great tool that you could use even if it's not white labeled.
Yep. That's right.
So Terry, I want to get to your question. Terry says, I'm a service area business, and this week Google changed the setup, causing me to re-enter my address plus add postal codes to my service area. How do you stay ahead or handle the Google changes? Then he followed up and said, hey, I think Perch just answered my earlier question. GMB updates are mentioned in this, yes?
Yep. So that's one of the things. We're not actually looking at the individual updates. We're looking at, do you have one or more updates there? Because to your point, there's so many and there's so many different ways that they do that. And then I think on the more broad, just kind of how do we keep up to date? The beauty is we have a really, really good, strong relationship with the Google My Business team. We have a lot of kind of calls that we're doing to connect on new functionality, so that we can kind of get early access and make sure that those new updates are something that we can incorporate in, so that by the time they're actually rolling out, we're accounting for them.
Got it. Terry, just to let you know, the updates they're talking about there were the updates to the Google My Business listing. Like sometimes there's updates, suggested updates, I think, to your address or to other aspects or hours or things like that. I think that's what you guys are saying you're tracking, right?
Correct.
Yep.
Okay.
Or customers have added attributes or suggested attributes, like pricing and that sort of stuff. So, yep.
Yeah, to keep up with what Google's actually doing, there's several different sources for that. Certainly we try to help keep you guys informed here at Local Marketing Institute, but I know that David's got a great blog. Joy Hawkins has a good blog. There's some really good bloggers out there, and maybe we'll do a post about that here upcoming on that. But there's lots of ways to keep up with that. Got time for a couple more questions?
Yeah.
Although, we had several people who were saying, Alex, we're concerned. We keep watching your battery ticking down to,
I know,
20,
I'm getting
19, 9.
reinforcements. I promise you. So if there's a question where David's going long-winded, I'm going to run out and grab it.
That's okay. That's okay. So Kira asks, can you remove duplicate listings or get GMB profiles that have been suspended re-verified through this tool, or is it just showing information to the user?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So I think from a duplicate perspective, I think that is unfortunately the bane of all of our existences. We don't have a great kind of additional layer for duplicates. We want to make sure that we're bringing them in, but that same kind of resolution process or kind of going through Google's there. On the verification piece, that is one thing that we are looking to incorporate more widely, both into the grader itself, but then also into Perch. One of the recommendations you would get right off the bat is if you ran the grade and weren't verified, that would be the very first thing we'd recommend for you to do. But we are looking to make it as streamlined as possible using the new API endpoints that are available through Google to actually facilitate the creation of businesses, the claiming of businesses, and the verification of businesses using those new methods when possible, for phone numbers, emails, or the traditional, the mail.
So are you going to put those elements into Grader and Perch, or typically those kind of things, claiming listings, creating companies, merging duplicates, that's usually something that's more of a paid service or paid tool rather than something that's in a free tool.
Yeah. So, again, at this point for us, on the individual location basis, because we're not doing this at huge scale in terms of trying to validate 500 at once, the users coming in on a one-off basis, for us, it's let's get them into a good place and let's get them verified. Again, what we found is that it's almost not in our best interest to try to put a stake in the ground to say, you're going to pay us for this one thing, because then it's like, well, month 2, it's hard to really validate that we showed you anything interesting because you've done that one thing and it's gone. So for us, there's getting you validated helps us in the long term to do all the other things that I think we have a lot more ongoing benefit with. Even though it is extremely important, the API that's available now makes it easy enough where I think it's okay for us to support that.
Just really quickly on the duplicate front, as Alex said, it's obviously a huge pain point for everybody in this industry. My experience has been that actually the best way to get those resolved is to tweet at Google My Biz. That they are generally awfully responsive in that channel, and I think also because it's public, there's maybe a little more pressure on them to actually resolve it in a timely manner. So that's kind of my recommendation, and maybe we can look at sort of auto-populating a tweet as part of Inbox here.
There you go.
In the future to try to sort of streamline that process as best we can.
Couple more quick questions here. So one, I think they're saying that. So just to clarify, these tools won't help me actually verify or claim my listing right now.
Right. I believe that's true right now, but we're working on getting the verification process integrated into the product.
Okay. There's another one up here, which I think was very interesting. I don't quite know what this means. How can Grader Perch help you #, stop crap on the map? I love the hashtag.
Well, so that's
Joy's favorite hashtag.
That's Joy Hawkins hashtag. Right. So I don't know. We're not going to be necessarily reporting competitors as part of Grader, I don't think, which is primarily, I think, what that campaign is designed to do. I'm a full supporter of that campaign, but I think this is really geared much more around sort of your own presence on Google and not necessarily looking at your competition as much. Now, Alex mentioned, of course, we do have some sort of category level intelligence around review counts and ratings and that sort of thing. But it's not necessarily geared around reporting on specific competitors. That said, the Perch app itself, which is, as I said, a free download, has the ability to add a watch list. So if you want to know, like, when a competitor is getting a new review or is running a new promotion on social media, the Perch app actually will show you a lot of those events if you add that specific business to the watch list. So that's there is a little bit of competitive monitoring in there, but it's not part of the sort of Google My Business Grader flow.
Okay, so a couple more questions on functionality. I've been trying to group them all together here. So one is, I had a couple of questions on this. Do you provide any rating or any kind of functionality regarding the GMB website part of your listing? Which I know that is kind of an optional piece and not a lot of businesses, well, a lot of businesses are using them, but it's not necessarily the most recommended.
Yeah, so it's a great question though. I mean, and again, it's something that we're always looking at. I'm sure people will notice there's a few different areas that we decided not to include in this initial grade. So the website was one of those. Booking was another one where we just decided, and also with messaging. And so again, the reason we made those is because we had a hard time with something like, hey, you have Google updates pending, or you should have an interior photo. We really tried to focus on things that were like, I can feel very confident giving you that recommendation. With those other situations or the other bits of functionality, I think it's so situational based on the level of sophistication or where the person is in terms of like what their website looks like or how they manage those customers, that we kind of just decided, let's stick with what we know for sure is concrete, and decide kind of as those other tools evolve if they should be folded in.
That makes sense. That makes sense, because I know that, like, for instance, Google My Business websites or the booking tools, you said it varies so widely. There's so many different opinions. It's hard to actually put a grade on that.
Yep.
Yeah, makes sense. Speaking of that, a question here. I think you did mention this, but I want to just verify it. They said, can they get notified by email of pending changes to my listing? I think they're talking about, how sometimes there's suggested updates and you have to go in and review that, and Google doesn't always notify you that those are there. How do you notify a business of that, or can you?
So at this point, I don't think we're actively notifying of that. I know that, again, within Google, I believe that they have some level of notification that they can send, but today we're not. That being said, if you do have the kind of Perch iOS or Android downloaded, we do have push notifications as new things come in that we could say, hey, there's a new bit of guidance, or you'll see, like, this is another example of like, hey, you got a 1-star review. This is a top priority thing. Those are going to be things that either get emailed or included in that push notification.
Yep, there is, I know, at least a weekly digest of the Perch app.
Yep.
So there, I mean, I don't know that daily is a possibility. Alex would know more than I would, but but like he said, download the app and allow push notifications, and you'll get notified of that stuff in much shorter order.
Okay, and we'll put a link both to the ThriveHive Grader and the Perch and Perch app in the description of this when we post it live for you guys. One other question here that I have is Q&A. Does the tool notify us of any Q&A changes to our listing? Because obviously that's not really a big notification thing that Google does right now.
Yep. So the main thing at this point with Q&A, and I think we absolutely see the value in it, and we're exploring different ways to pull Q&A in, because although it shows up on the Google My Business or the Google profile, it's not actually available within the Google My Business API currently. But like I said, with that being said, we're actively looking at ways that we can start to incorporate that, because of I think the industry has all kind of started to align on the importance of populating that, seeding it, and really managing that bit. So we want to make sure that unlike something like bookings or website, we really feel like that is a critical piece. And so it's something that we're looking at right now.
Yeah, just to be clear, the Q&A team is not part of the Google My Business team. They're actually two different teams within Google. And so as far as I know, it's unlikely that Q&A will be part of the Google My Business API anytime soon. So as Alex said, we're looking at, however we can pull those questions in and suggest to people, what they should be asking and answering. We're going to try our hardest to do that, but it's actually more of a structural issue at Google right now than anything that we're able to tackle.
So Sherry Benelli, who's been one of our presenters previously, has also said that Google has started sending out email notifications when questions are asked of a business. So I was actually was unaware of that change. That's good to know. Thanks, Sherry. Let's see here. Any other questions from you guys? Let's see any other ones I can find here. All right. I think those. One more question just came through. The new follow button, right? So I guess Google is now saying, hey, you can now follow a business. Is there any reporting on that? How many can people find out how many follows they've gotten, things like that in your tool?
Yeah, so I think that kind of goes to the general insights conversation. And so that, again, in terms of, as you can see, like there's a lot of things that we wrangled with in terms of what to include, what not. At this point, we haven't actually included the insights because it is so difficult to know what good looks like. And for us to really be able to say, like, are you doing good or bad? It's being able to get those benchmarks. So that was, I think, something that we wanted to see how it materializes and see the impact that we start to have, or that it starts to have for businesses. And if it's something that really is going to move the needle. And then, if it is, find ways to incorporate that. But we're kind of still in the, like, let's see how that goes. It's just an interesting thing at this point, I think.
And you have at least one skeptic on the webinar here of that it really will move the needle. So in the case of follows in particular.
Well, they killed Google Plus, and maybe this is their version of trying to create a social network for businesses. Who knows?
Right.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. Stay ahead of the curve, but not necessarily on the bleeding edge.
Exactly. Don't get run over by the steamroller behind you.
Sherry says that she's another skeptic.
Good. I'm in good company then.
We're in good company.
Yeah.
All right, gang. Well, hey, if there's no other questions here for David or Alex, guys, I want to thank you so much for your time. This was really good, really informative. Great tool. Seriously, and the fact that you guys make this available for free to businesses out there, I think is fantastic. I think it shows you guys are committed to this, and hopefully it also is going to be good at driving some business to a great tool in ThriveHive as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Eric.
Thanks for the opportunity, Eric. And
thanks, guys. We'll talk to you soon.
Have a great weekend personally, and thanks for all the questions.
Yeah, this was fantastic. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.